Welcome back to the Carrot and Stick podcast, a podcast series where we look to get under the skin of all things performance management and motivation to understand what makes our wonderful world of recruitment tick. Today, I'm sitting down with Will Grashoff, founder and CEO of OxSeven, a recruitment agency, very well known for some very funny content on their LinkedIn page. Do recommend you checking it out if you're interested to see a little bit more about what I'm talking about. Will's a really interesting guy, talking an awful lot around how he gets super involved as a manager in the day-to-day of his business, but also is very, very candid about the mistakes that he's made as a leader and how he's corrected those over time to drive better accountability, but also be a better manager and leader to his people. We end things off talking about data in his business and its importance over the last 12 months with how the market has been. And we go through some pretty interesting stories that he's got, the horror one definitely being one that I recommend you stick around for. Without further ado, though, I'll stop talking now and let Will get into this one because he's got so much to share over the next hour. So here he is, Will Grashoff, founder and CEO of OxSeven. Will, really appreciate you jumping on and giving us your time. Thank you so much. For those who are tuning in here and are wondering who the hell is Will, tell us all about yourself, about the business. Give us a little quick 60-second spiel about you.
Yeah, of course. So I'm the founder and MD of OxSeven Talent Partners. We have been around now for 7 years or so, and we've recently transitioned pretty much fully into the rec space after having kind of 6 years of being a dirty generalist. So we're very, very busy on LinkedIn in terms of creating content and kind of putting our adverts and whatnot out there.
I do see your content appearing pretty semi-regularly, actually. It's pretty good.
Good. It's working then.
It works, yeah.
So yeah, I have a certain way of thinking around the purpose of content and why we use it and how it can drive more people toward us, which was a major factor in us deciding to go into fully rec to rec, really. So yeah, I'm 39. I've got 2.5 kids and a wife who's way too attractive for me. So yeah, that's me.
Relate. Maybe not so much on the age side of things, but here we are. When you say generalist recruiter, I'm really curious. Was that literally you would do anything that came your way, or give us an idea of what you mean when you say generalist?
Yeah, so pretty much that. So I started life out as a real pure generalist, and it worked for me. I think there's some people who can just pick up roles, who can fill them and do really well just through their own skills. And, without sounding too much like an arrogant knobhead, I did that. So my first 2 or 3 years of recruitment, I was working kitchen porches and filling those for $2,000. And I was doing a sales director for 12.5. And one conversation I'd be talking about, loading a dishwasher, and the next would be about, the economical situation in South America, because that's how it relates to their import products. So I could just do that, right? So I found that quite easy. What I didn't really kind of appreciate is how not everyone can do that, and actually having a specialism in a certain area really helps people kind of learn and develop their own skills, because they need to have a very, kind of narrow subject matter knowledge gap and not worry about everything else that's going on in kind of different industries. So yeah, we would pretty much do anything and everything.
I love that. More about being wide versus necessarily deep, but if you can do both, then obviously, like you say, you can shine, but it's not for everyone. T-shaped is only what we hear about in the dev world. It's you can do a lot of things to a decent level, but being able to go really deep in a certain area is what makes you really special at what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Funny enough, the dev world was one I never even touched. Because I tried it once, and I was talking to devs and software architects, and they just thought I was an absolute idiot. They're like, you were just chancing it. I thought Java was just a flavor of Linux. So it was just this guy's a chance. So I just avoided that from then on in.
It is. I mean, I'm a developer by trade myself, and it's definitely one thing I see as a problem is most recruiters who are in the tech will reach out and be like, we're hiring someone who's got HTML, CSS, JavaScript experience. And it's a bit that's like saying, I know how to use bricks, I know how to use mortar. And it's yeah, cool, but what have you actually built? Do you build homes? Do you build offices?
Yeah.
It's such a fundamental part of basically every language that you'll work with that I'm like, come on, guys, give me more about what you actually specialize in. That's what I want to hear about. So it is always a fun one.
Yeah.
I feel that. Awesome. Well, we had a good chat before we went live about 3 areas that you want to cover up here as well, which I really like as well, because they all feel like it's very much focused on leadership, but all very much close to the ground as well, which I think is really important. First one being around mistakes that you made around, as you said, not being a great manager, but things that made you a great leader. leading from the front, so really getting stuck in with your team. And the third one was around how you use data in the business, and especially how that's been so important over the last 12 months. Any of those three that you want to start with, or should we just start from the top?
Let's start from the top. Yeah.
Wicked. Well, I love it when someone's nice and open and transparent. So the floor is yours. What do you think the main mistakes you made as a manager in this case then?
How long have we got? Because this could take a while.
Well, the longest episode's been about 2 hours, so
Cool.
maybe not quite that long, but go on.
Yeah, I'll try and keep below that. So when I first started OxSeven, I feel as though I had a bit of a sycophantic notion of what being a good manager is and what being a good leader is. And I think it was really difficult to let go of my kind of deep-rooted desire to be liked and to be respected through people liking me and wanting to kind of, work for me and work hard because they thought I was a good bloke. And I think it was probably earlier this year, but I had a real kind of, almost crisis of confidence and realization that actually being a good manager is about getting the absolute best out of someone's potential. And I think for a very long time, I confused, being what I would consider a good leader, i.e. someone who leads from the front and kind of treats people with respect and shows people how to do it and they'd like follow me. I confused, being a good leader with, being a good manager, and they're so different. So I think for a long, long time, I allowed mediocrity. I allowed people not to be accountable for stuff they maybe weren't doing because I thought, well, actually, I don't want to jeopardize this great kind of dynamic I've created by pulling them up on stuff and maybe upsetting them and having to have difficult conversations and, confrontation potentially. Because I just wanted to be this great figurehead who everyone loved and, was really good. So, that if I'd have from day one concentrated on being a great manager, understanding metrics, holding people accountable for metrics, and kind of output, I think the business would be in a very, very different position to what it is now. Naturally, you can do both at the same time. It's not, you can be a very good manager and a very good leader. It's quite difficult. But I think this year has massively taught me, the difference between the two. And, like I say, we'd be in a much, much better place if I'd have realised the importance of being a great manager earlier on.
I love that one, because the sort of line that comes to mind when I hear that sort of thing is firm but fair. You hear people say this about good bosses, like, they're quite firm, like they have expectations, they'll demand that of us, but they are quite... My cat is being super noisy. I don't know if you can hear that down the microphone. It's just really going off. But firm but fair is the line that I often hear as being they do have our expectations. They set them and we know what they are, and they're very clear on, look, if you miss this, it's trouble. But they're also very human with us as well. They're very fair about it. What do you think, kind of like, when you think about more tactical implementation of that, things that you actually started doing that really did kind of like put that into life and really kind of change the old you into the current you? What were some of those things that you realised and used?
It was accountability. So I think with all technology we have access to now in recruitment, understanding metrics and understanding what works and what doesn't work is easier than it's easier than it's ever been, really. And treating everybody as individual still. Like, not everybody has to do 50 calls to get one meeting. Some people's metrics are different because they're at different experience levels. So not putting like a blanket load of KPIs in there, but knowing that everybody is different and treating them with respect of being different was huge. So I think, it was understanding what people need to do to get to the output that we both want. The output we both want is, the consultant wants to be making good commission and I want to be making a good margin on them, essentially. And it's as simplistic as that. So it's understanding what you need to put in the kind of the top of the funnel in order for that to come out at the bottom of the funnel. And if you're not doing it, rather than just, okay, look, catch up next week. Don't worry, you work really hard. I can see how well done. Just catch up next week, do double next week, and then kicking that can down the road again and again and again, being all like, why haven't you done that? Like, what's prevented you from doing that? And if there's genuine reasons, let's overcome those reasons and find solutions. You've not been able to do it. So I think it's holding them accountable and also really respecting the metrics, the data and the KPIs. And I think it's really fashionable to be like, oh, KPIs are bullshit. They don't mean anything. They're rubbish. They're this, they're that. Actually, there is a place for, indicators of someone's performance, right? And don't get me wrong, there is applications of, this, which are awful, which make no sense, which, just stupid, right? And they are bad. But actually, understanding how many CVs you need to send to get an interview, and then how many interviews you need to have to get a potential placement is really important. And if you don't measure that, you're literally just kind of throwing a load of papers in the air and hoping, they come down in the right order. So I think it's, the combination of accountability and understanding the right metrics of something was really, really key for me. So yeah.
I know exactly what you mean, by the way. There are some bullshit ones out there where people will say like, oh, you haven't made over 100 calls today. Well, that's bad. And they're like, yeah, I was out half the day seeing clients and meetings. It's like, oh, you missed your KPIs still.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets a little bit silly. And I remember a system one of our clients used a few years ago actually was they kind of said to everyone that came in, look, here's the outcomes that we expect. If you hit those, we're not going to look at your outputs. If you aren't hitting your outcomes, we will look at the outputs. And if you're not hitting your outputs, we'll look at your inputs. So as long as they were getting X amount of revenue in a month, they did not give a shit how many meetings they were having, how many interviews they were lining up. Of course, if they might turn around and say, look, if you want to double your money, you could do more than this and you can get X, Y, and Z. But if you're happy with how you are, you won't ask any questions. That's completely fine. If they weren't hitting revenue, they go and look at, right, how many interviews are you getting lined up? How many candidates are going through to offer, for example? What are you actually getting for the work that you're putting in? If those are too low, then it'd be like, right, let's go and look back at the very start then. How many calls are you making? What are you doing on LinkedIn in terms of activity here? How many emails are you sending out a day? Things like that. And they would not care about that later step until they'd looked at, are you hitting your outputs and your outcomes and so on and so forth, which I thought was a really good and mature way of doing it. Whereas, like you say, for some, they do kind of go, oh, have you spent 3 hours on the phone today? And it's a bit too reductionist, isn't it?
Well, and do you know what, right? It's, I was on to a candidate yesterday. He said one of the KPIs that they have, which is a strict KPI, is you have to download 10 CVs from Reed every single day. Like, you've got to ask why. Like, what am I achieving just by going, download, like, and not doing anything about CV, just knowing what you've done. Like, there must be some form of logical sentiment there, which once upon a time made a little bit of sense, i.e. the more CVs we have in my database, the more people we have to market to, and the more, like, there must be, but it just seems so wild that someone can be, or they can have their commissions or money earned kind of pause or stop because they're not hitting arbitrary numbers like 10 downloads of CVs. But yeah, the best application of KPIs, I think, is when, like you say, as long as the output's where they want it to be, they don't give a shit about the rest. And, if they need to reverse engineer it and work out why, that's the perfect time to do it. And to be fair, that's, I think, what we've done. I've worked out, why maybe we weren't hitting the numbers that I wanted to hit, and, and why maybe someone wasn't picking up as many jobs. And, then you can look at it in more granular detail, like, okay, cool, you're sending enough kind of outreach, you're making enough calls, maybe the quality that you're putting into that isn't where it should be. So let's work on what does work and tweak it. So I think a lot more of that, and actually, as cynical as this may sound, like, maybe kind of the consultants having to accept that, they're not as good as maybe they think they are. And it sounds like I'm dragging them through the mud here, but I'm not. But for them to think, well, actually, I need to develop, I need to get better, I need to kind of get to a level where I'm really good, rather than just thinking, well, my outreach isn't working because nobody wants to buy from me. Not having that mentality, but thinking, actually, maybe I just need to be better at what I'm doing in order to get to that stage where people want to kind of engage and buy from me.
That's it. I think the big one I wanted to ask you about, and speaking about all this, to be fair, is accountability and how you actually hold it. Because, like, it's one thing being like, oh, don't worry about it, then we'll see how we do next week. Another one being like, oh, well, what happened there and why did that come about? In some cases, like, you have to be a little bit firm with people when you're really driving accountability and be saying, look, here are my expectations, and if they're not met, X, Y, and Z will happen, or here's what will be the outcome of that. How did you find yourself being able to get more stern on that? Because one thing I'm definitely relating with you on is you saying, I want to be liked. It is a big weakness of mine as well. And there are definitely times where you have to be a bit more strict in terms of saying, if you don't do X, Y, and Z, here's what is going to happen, right? And really kind of setting out, here's what the bar is. Just curious how you do it internally.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I could be exposing myself as an absolute like megalomaniac arsehole. But like, I feel like over the years, I've kind of, through the way I've been, I've kind of banked a lot of goodwill, right? A lot of good sentiment that they have towards me. So, like, the conversations around accountability now is almost like slightly tugging on my heartstrings, saying, look, you're not doing it. You're taking the piss out of me. You know, like we built this kind of relationship where I've treated you well over the years. Like, you're not doing it. It's quite offensive to me now, but you're not doing it. So yeah, it was trying to kind of take that angle. And I know some people would probably say, well, actually, that's, you know, maybe emotional blackmail or whatever. But I'm just trying to leverage the goodwill that I've built up by being, you know, this good leader and bad manager, by saying, actually, look, I've explained to you why I now need to be more of a manager than a leader. Like, follow me, you know, understand why I'm doing it. Don't resent me. Don't be pissed off or get petty because I'm calling you up on stuff. Understand the reason I'm doing it. It's because I want you to be getting your commission at the end of each month and be absolutely buzzing and thinking, oh, I'm going to go and do this or do that, or I'm going to save for this, you know, rather than, you know, just having your base salary because you've not made any commission because you've not done what you should be doing. So I think it's, you know, about, leveraging lots of different kind of avenues that drive them toward doing what you want them to do.
That's it. It's definitely a big thing that we try and stress is, like, at the end of the day, we're a fully remote business. We treat the team really well. We have meetups every 6 weeks, for example. Fully remote work, and as I mentioned, it's all pretty chill. Here's the cat, by the way. She's now just jumped on my lap. Hello, darling.
It's like an evil villain now.
I need to do the whole like chair spin, but she's not really a black cat. She doesn't quite fit the bill, bless her. But no, I'm very much on the kind of idea of, you know, if we try and treat people well, we can kind of say, look, guys, like, we want you to be surrounded by great people that perform well. Are you one of those great people that are performing well? If you're not, you know, what is that? Is something happening here that means you can't be at that level right now?
Yeah.
Being able to ask those kind of questions are the hard questions to ask, the ones that are worth asking sometimes. They're completely there with you on that front as well.
Yeah.
What about other mistakes that you feel you maybe made being a manager as well? Anything else that comes to mind where you just think, that was a learning experience?
I think being too submissive to clients and setting that example to the rest of the team. Like, I've always felt as though I've been a little bit of a, you know, if there's opportunity for money or for revenue there, like, you know, I'll be stupid not to take it. I'm going to go and try and do it. Whereas actually, and again, this is a discovery this year more so, you know, standing your ground is important, and recognizing that business a lot quicker is so much better for everyone. Because, you know, a lot of the time, especially through COVID, there was almost that mentality of like, just take anything on, whatever you've got, you know, just go for it, drop your fees, all of this stuff. Whereas actually that isn't the best long-term plan and not the best long-term solution. So I think we certainly have like drawn more lines in the sand with clients who either don't respect the process, who don't respect recruiters, who really see it as a distressed purchase rather than an investment. We've kind of said, look, we're not going to work with you. If your first question is what are your fees, it's probably not going to be conducive for a great relationship. We always try and leave the commercial negotiations right to the end. So we built up a bit of like a demonstrable value offering to them, rather than saying, look, we work at 25%, do you want to use this, yes or no? Like, you know, I think being a lot less submissive and, you know, actually saying, well, no, look, you know, we deserve the fees we charge, you know, and if you don't like it, there's plenty of other people who'll do it for a lot less money. But, you know, chances are you'll find yourself in this exact situation 6 months' time, and you may not, you know, come back to us for help. But yeah, like I think around that, and everybody's obviously watched me negotiate with clients and be a little bit maybe weak with negotiations. So I think, oh, fuck it, I just want to get some money on the board. Whereas actually now it's like, if they don't want to pay that, then tell them to go somewhere else. It's fine. You know, we're not the right fit for them. And so that knowing that you can't be, you can't be everyone's cup of tea. Because if you were, you'd be a mug. So yeah.
I've heard that expression so many times, and it still makes me laugh every single time I hear it.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
No, and it's also a really fair point. I was speaking to someone recently, actually, who's like a pricing consultant for recruiters, And they talk about this all the time. Is people drop their fees so quickly just to kind of be like, oh, we really want to win this business, really want them over the line. When you look at it, as you kind of said, is if you take on everyone, you find yourself so diminished in terms of capacity that when a good paying client does come along and wants to work with you and has got a big project, you haven't really got the resource to do it because of all these other requirements you're working that aren't as good for you. So although it feels really painful to say no to revenue, like especially in tough markets like we are now, that focus on your best clients really is like number one, because especially when things start getting better as well as they're starting to in the last couple of months or so, it becomes so much more important than ever to know who the good clients are and making sure you've got a good relationship with them.
Is that John Brooks, is it, the pricing consultant?
It is indeed.
Yeah. So I get his newsletter when I see his post, and like unequivocally, him drumming that in and banging that drum has made us kind of, it's reinforced, what we know is right. So I saw him at the Ref Expo, and he's such a nice guy. So I love.
He's super lovely guy, but when it comes to pricing, he ain't mucking about.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is how all of us should be. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second topic that you mentioned was sort of this leading from the front piece, which I guess really helps build up, like you say, that kind of kudos bank that you build with your team, not just how you treat them over the last 2 years, but also how you are today. Is you're not kicking back, putting your feet up on the desk and saying, right, guys, do as I say, not as I do. You're actually getting involved and stuck in as well, like you say, involved in negotiations and recruiting yourself and showing them that you're there doing the work at the same time. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, I've worked in environments where the MD or the owner company has literally had his feet up on the desk, scrolling through Auto Trader because he wants to buy a new Range Rover or whatnot. And his whole mantra was, do as I say, not as I do. And as someone who was essentially paying for that Range Rover for all my hard work, I just found it so demoralizing and so demoting. And, I've been in numerous sports team over the years. And I've always been someone who likes to lead from the front and be like, look, I'm going to set the example. I might not be the best footballer, but I'll be the hardest working. I'll be the person who sets the kind of, the goals and sets the targets and beats them, right? So when I started my own business, I've always had that mantra of, look, if anybody's going to build more than me, they're going to have to work harder than me. And, if someone's working harder than me, then fair play to them. They're absolutely amazing. So I've always loved kind of leading from the front, and I suppose giving people perspectives in terms of like how to phrase certain things, what questions to ask, what to say in calls, what to do in different scenarios that they wouldn't necessarily get. And I think the amount of stuff I've learned from really good consultants over the years who I've heard them ask a certain question in a certain way or, lead strategic pauses has been so useful to me. Like, I really take pride in passing that on to my team. And, ultimately, I can't expect them to do a job that I wouldn't be prepared to do myself. And I don't feel as though I'd have much credibility when managing them if I didn't have my finger on the pulse of what is actually happening, in the recruitment market at the moment. And one of my biggest bugbears is people who are recruitment trainers or whatnot, who haven't actively recruited or built for like 5, 10, 15 years, because it's changed so much. The landscape is hugely different to what it was then, but they're still trying to use these like sycophantic like situations of, I don't know, taking references from a HR manager and then flipping it around, like all of this stuff, which these days just doesn't work. It's mostly bollocks. So yeah, like I really feel it's important for people to know that I'm prepared to do what I'm asking them to do. I will do, the metrics that I need to do. I'll hit those. And in return, I expect them to do that as well. And, I think it's, if I can't do it, then I can't really expect them to do it, if that makes sense.
I always like that viewpoint. The one thing that always kind of comes to mind is how do you split your time effectively then? Because there's a piece in being alongside them and putting in a good shift and showing, look, if I can do it, you can do this as well. If you're trying to kind of match the level of them and deliver to the level that they do, the problem there is you then have less time to be a leader or a manager. And of course, being the CEO founder, there's a million and one other things that go on behiing the scenes that you have to get involved in as well. How do you make sure that you're properly dividing your time in a way where you're not kind of, doing a good enough job on the delivery side alongside the team, but also not letting them down as a manager, as a leader of the business?
So that's a really good question, right? And the honest answer is I don't do it successfully. Like I said before, I want to be liked, and I'm a bit of a people pleaser. So I've taken on responsibilities like volunteer responsibilities in my local football club because, I enjoy it and they asked me to do it. And so like I head up commercial risk, so that takes up a big chunk of my time. One of my best friends, we started a butcher company together. So like we do that as well. So that absorbs a lot of my time. And then I've got, this core OxSeven recruitment business. That takes up a huge amount of time. And then on top of that, I've also got family as well. And realistically, probably over the last 2 or 3 years, unfortunately, it's probably been the family time, which has been sacrificed, right? So, early mornings, like 5 a.m. starts. I'm in my office downstairs now. The kids might come in a little bit later in the morning and want to kind of hang out or make breakfast. Like, no, I'm working, I'm busy. I might do this forward. I'm helping out, I'm doing good stuff, but realistically, a lot of the time, I'm not overly present with them because I'm thinking about I need to send that CV or I need to talk to that person about this. So I've managed it really badly over the last couple of years, like sure. And I think where I've spread myself too thin, everything has suffered, but the billings and not being able to be that good manager and, sit down with them and coach and guide and, do all of that good stuff has probably meant that people haven't developed the pace and the, level that they should be doing if I did have time. So I think over the kind of last 6 months, I've really tried to scale back and prioritize what is important, what I actually enjoy doing, and what I can let go of. I've let go of a few things that I've previously done, which at the time was hard, but I'm so relieved now. But, I've just kind of said, look, I can't do that. I'm sorry. And I've got a lot better at saying no. Which will give me more time to be a better boss and also spend more time with my family. So I think ultimately being able to say no and not have huge remorse is good. And I need to work on not being such a people pleaser and doing anything anyone asks because I want to help out. So yeah.
Much more a thing of wanting to please your family than it is so much other people that, in 10, 15 years time, you might not even speak to anymore as well, right?
Exactly that. And that's what it boiled down to. Like I'll never get this time again with my kids or my wife when they're growing up. But I will know other people. I'll have other friends, other business partners, and other colleagues and stuff. So yeah, it was that realization I think which kind of has helped me realign it and actually I suppose compartmentalize the different responsibilities I have in life, and actually I'm not going to let this part, the recruitment part, impact too much on the family, and a little bit vice versa. So about compartmentalizing my day and making sure I'm doing the right things at the right time and being clever with the kind of limited time I have each day.
I love that because I can guarantee there are probably some listening to this now who are a similar size to yourselves as well, or have just getting started. They've only got a team of 3 to 5 people, for example, and they're probably just thinking, God, I pour every waking hour into the business at the minute, and I know that it's hurting, but for now, I'm willing to make that sacrifice. The problem there always being, once you get towards that later stages in life, the big regret people have is they didn't spend more time with family or those that mattered. In your case, what is that balance that you've now started to establish? Do you say, right, look, the business, I work 9 till 6, or I do, like you say, 5 until 8, I have an hour with the kids, and then I'll come back to it for another 5 or 6 hours, another hour with the kids, a couple of hours when they're in bed in the evening? How do you actually slice it up so you are making sure that the family are now a priority?
Yeah, so it's all about finding that time where I realistically couldn't see them or spend time with them regardless. So I do a lot of early mornings. So I'm first up in the morning, and like I call that like the clearing the deck or soloing the frogs part of the day, where it might be paying invoices, it might be shortlisting or whatever, right? There's so much stuff you can do in that time, right? And then as soon as they're up, it's laptop and phone in a separate room. So my focus is on them rather than, just constantly checking for stuff to come in. Then once they're off at school, like it's almost like they're put in a separate room, and then I can fully concentrate on recruitment. The beauty of kind of having your own business or having a bit of freedom is that I can go and do a school run and then take them to the skate park after school, and pick work back up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever, or in the evening, right, when they're asleep. So it's about being smart with your time and not, I suppose, allowing them to cross over too much where I should be spending time with the kids, but actually I'm choosing to have a take on call with a client. So being organised and using my calendar, like someone who's quite chronically poorly organised, has been really important. So saying like between 3 and 5, my calendar's booked out, just as kids. So no one else can book in there. I mentally know, but I don't need to do any work. So, and then I'll start again at a different time. So just about splitting the day up and not sticking to like a really arbitrary 8 till 6 day and then seeing them after that. It's about allowing myself to have like almost like sprints of different things, like different time to do stuff.
I guess kind of like address that other question around this too. How do you take that with your team? Do you say to them, look, guys, I'm not going to be here because I'm with my kids during these hours? And are you saying to that while expecting them to be working still between those hours, or how do you approach it?
Yeah, pretty much. Leave me the fuck alone. No, it's that is hard because people can need stuff like instantly. There's almost like that. I need to know what can I do this straight away. It's really difficult to then almost put like sometimes a 2-hour delay in getting back to someone because I'm choosing to go to the skate park with my kids. Now, fortunately, nearly all of us are in very similar boats where we've got kids. We've got responsibilities. So there's a bit of an acceptance from everybody that you might not hear straight away. But in my entire recruitment career, I could probably count on one hand the amount of time a delay of 2 or 3 hours has been significant to any form of deal or anything like that. Most of the time people think it's immensely important because it's important to them. But realistically, it doesn't matter too much. And it's the same with like replying straight away in the evenings. Like, you don't always have to reply like at 7 or 8 o'clock because someone's messaged you then and they're working. Like, it can wait until the next day. So I think it's that level of acceptance that not everything is as important as you may think it is. And if something genuinely is important, then you act. But really, doing what we do, perm recruitment, it's not that. Like, I know I'm probably sounding stupid here, but it's not that important. Like, it's not life or death. We're not dealing with, medical emergencies or anything like that. We're dealing with setting up interviews, sending CVs, responding to questions. It's not the be all and end all. So yeah, them having to wait a few hours sometimes is just like an occupational acceptance that this is the environment we work in.
There's a good few examples of this recently as well. Now I think about it, like the CEO of Sourceflow, Matt. I remember I was speaking to him probably a couple of years ago now, to be fair. But he was saying when he'd hire in new staff, like he had a little office that he was always separated. He'd always go and sit in there and he'd close the door deliberately so he wasn't there to ask questions at all the time. Because he was like, the power of letting someone sit there and figure something out for themselves, that feeling like they have to ask you and check absolutely everything by you, is really powerful. And we had the same recently when both our head of CS and our CS team lead were away on annual leave for a couple of weeks at the same time. It was unfortunate timing, but both were away. And the team, I was there to ask questions to, but I probably got about 4 questions over that 2-week period.
Yeah.
And when they came back, they were both like, oh, they've actually kind of got this figured out by themselves, so they don't need us, they don't need to ask questions, which gives you a bit of a crisis of manager feeling like you're not needed, but at the same time shows that if you leave people to it, they often will kind of decide on the best course themselves and really start to take a lot of ownership and responsibility without needing you around to approve everything they do, which is really good.
And that's, that's the key hiring trait to look at, in terms of the ability to use initiative. Because, when I think back over the years, like certain things that people have messaged me or rang me or whatever to find out, it's like, you could do that yourself. Like, we joke in our office, I'm like the first line IT support. But the majority of the time is me just Googling something and working out how to do it. Like, but there wasn't a bit of a reliance on me to do everything. Where it's like, come on, you're all grown adults. You can work out how to add an email signature to Outlook, right? So, it's about, you're right. Sometimes making people stand on their own 2 feet so they can work it out, use their own initiative and kind of put it in place themselves.
I mean, it's somewhat relevant here as well, because the third point you had was around using data in the business, and it's important, especially over the last 12 months. Obviously, giving people access to data themselves to make their own decisions and figure things out is quite important in and of itself. But before we get in towards that, how do you use data in the business, and why has it become so important over the last 12 months for you?
Yeah, so I think historically, the data we've kind of taken most interest in has almost been like qualitative or like sentimental data. And that sounds really strange, but like our our metrics of what we look at, and this is a harsh reality for us, would be things like what would people say on the videos we put out on LinkedIn, right? That would be a metric that we would look at and go, look, got these good comments, brilliant, successful, happy days, made us no money. So, there was like a bit of a learning curve of, well, actually, but the metrics I really care about are the ones which are going to generate revenue, which are going to push us towards the financial goals I want us to get towards. So for a long, long time, like those financial numbers, those KPIs, those triggers were blind spot to me. Like it was just like, I don't know, like if someone said to me, how many CVs does a consultant send on average, per week? I'd be like, I don't know, a few? No idea, right? Because I was too focused on that end figure of this is how much money I want to generate, and not enough on how are they doing it. So essentially, when we weren't doing it, I didn't know why we weren't hitting those revenue triggers and those revenue targets, because I didn't know how many CVs, and like I wasn't reverse engineering it in an effective way. As systems we've used have got more advanced, and we've had access to better, more accurate, and real-time data, I've seen the importance in everybody being aware of it, everybody knowing how to access how many revenue-generating tasks they've done all day, how many CVs they've sent, and what they're tracking towards in terms of billings, so they can then make real-time interventions to get to where they need to be. So someone looking at, on a Thursday thinking, oh my God, I've only sent 15 CVs and I need to be tracking to send, 30 by the end of the week. The rest of my day now needs to be around sourcing candidates and doing that. And, same with BD. So, I think it's having an appreciation and a really healthy respect for the numbers that you need to put into the business to get the numbers you get out of the business is vital. I think for so long, I was just switched off to all that. I was just like, I'm not. I almost saw myself as like a punk. Like, I want to be, fuck the corporate world, fuck the numbers. We'll do this. We'll look after yourself. We'll make loads of money. Happy days. It doesn't work like that. No successful person has ever, been really whimsical and not giving a shit about numbers. They all know what they need to put in to get out. And I think it's just through listening to podcasts and to people talk about their experience who are really successful, you notice these common denominators. And the biggest one for me is around people who know the numbers in their business and what they need to do to make it work, and not just hope it all works out for the best because they feel like they're doing the right things enough of the time. So yeah.
Totally. I get that. I mean, that's spot on, I think, as well. Like, numbers are everything. Of course, all in context as well. Like we said, it's a case of saying you don't turn around and go, I wasted 3 hours on the phone today, because that out without any kind of context or other metrics to support it doesn't really make any sense. So I'm with you on that front. Speaking of specific numbers, though, what kind of things are you looking at week to week then? What is it that you care about as a leader when looking at how the team's performing for you to say, yes, we're doing great, or no, we're doing terribly, or we could be doing a bit better, but we're about there?
Yeah, of course. So there's a few things, right? So first of all, it will be new business in. So what we're generating, because new business is the lifeblood and the oxygen of everything we do. Like, it would be great to have clients who, spend millions and millions of pounds every single month. But reality is it's not. We need to continually always hedge our bets and spread our influence across as many clients as possible. So we'll always look at how many new terms of businesses have been signed, how many new jobs have been brought on with new clients and their existing clients split. Because also, we want to make sure we're looking after our existing clients and not just letting them lapse and fall into the distance and, good for someone else to pick them up. So that's a key one. There's always been a direct correlation between the amount of time somebody spends on the phone and the amount of money they bill. Almost like for like. So the person who spends the most time on the phone will be the top biller. The person who's the least is the lowest biller. So I look at phone times. We use a phone system called Ringover, which is really good. And that can give you really in-depth analytics about down to the tone of voice of the call, whether it is a happy call or an aggressive call or whatnot. So we can look at the kind of calls people are having. And, for me, cold calling or the perceived cold calling is still so important and such a vital tool. You can't influence someone over email. You can to a certain extent, but like the calling element, it's not a silver bullet, but it can help you get to an outcome a lot quicker because you can deal with real-time rejection. So if call times are low at the end of the week, my heart sinks. And I say, it frustrates me because yes, you may have sent some great emails. Well done. Like superb. You may have sent some great emails. Brilliant. But realistically, you're not going to get the same results you would do as if you were talking to someone on the phone or by Teams or whatnot. So those two things really are my key metrics. And then after that, you've got things like, the amount of new candidates we take on, how many people add into our network. And it's not just about having a conversation and going through a script and ticking out the boxes. It's about giving people such a good service that they then become fans of OxSeven, the brand. And, actually the amount of referrals we get from people we've spoken to who've never submitted for a job, never placed or never done anything, but they were so impressed with how we treated them that they referred other people to us is huge. Because ultimately, as an inherently lazy person, like I always like to take the path of least resistance, right? So actually, the best case scenario is a client to come into us and candidates to come into us, and I'm not having to do all of this outreach as much as I am now. So doing those kind of things, i.e. treating people really well, would encourage that and kind of grease that pole of, people coming to us and us not having to do as much outreach. So, and people don't tend to refer shit people as well. Like you don't tend to go, oh, look, my mate is a degenerate drunk and he can only, string two sentences together, but you got to meet him. He's great. People only tend to prefer really good people. So yeah, also kind of from that perspective as well, it's, we look at that.
What I like about the whole referral piece is, like you say, people weren't referring the bad ones because they know if they do, it reflects on them badly. And it's like, even in the case where for these people where they're necessarily making the referrals now, like even if that person isn't right for you right now, you never know in the future they'll come back and go, hey, actually I had a really good experience with you before. Now I'm actually looking, or now we are ready to hire. They will come back to you as ones that they trust. Because whether we like it or not, there's always going to be a certain stereotype about recruiters, I think, as being a little bit slimy, being a CV factory, all the rest of it. So for those that actually can give a really good service, I think it becomes so easy to stand out above the rest.
Yeah. And you know what? There's some really good recruiters. There's a company called We Are Zest who look at like NPS scores, and like that is their key metric and their key driver. And you can just see it in like the testimonials they get, but they clearly are thinking about their customers more than anything, and it just works really, really well. I think we'll hopefully see a mass move towards that kind of approach going forward, because realistically, that's the only way we can repair the reputation of the god-awful recruitment industry.
So how get rid of that reputation for being a CV factory, essentially? Yeah, let me set the database. Here you go now. Cheers, 10 grand for that. Thank you very much. Yeah. Got to get away from that at some point, haven't we? You mentioned kind of how in the last 12 months it's become really important, this whole data conversation as well. Why specifically the last 12 months?
Because I think the business hasn't grown at the rate I wanted it to grow, and I needed to kind of explore, why that is. And as the figurehead, the owner, like the responsibility and accountability does fall to me on that. That is my fault that, we haven't grown at the pace I want us to, because I've run it in a way which hasn't been conducive for that. So I think, being far more aware of that and going through difficult, choppy times and not having, like we did in 2021 and 22, like, placements just falling out of everywhere. Thinking, oh my God, this is easy. I love this go. It's now a case of like, actually, it's gone back to what it was like before COVID, which is a really difficult job. And, actually getting the business to where I want it to be, and not like a massive 100, 200 head business, but a very profitable small business is so key. And like I said, I realize the only way you can do that is through knowing numbers, respecting them, and kind of, driving the right metrics and right behaviors.
Spot on. In terms of the team themselves, how are you having them think about data? Are you having them look at their own numbers each and every single day? Are you having regular conversations about it? Maybe team meetings about data at the start of each week? What does your cadence for that look like?
Yeah, so it's access to dashboards where they can see what they've done the previous day and making it really easy to display that and understand it. So a lot of us will check it like literally hourly to see where we're at compared to other people. And I think it's good to have a little element of competitiveness and for them to see kind of at what rate other people are doing it. So a lot of the time you don't need to be overtly what the fuck's going on today, because they'll see it and there's almost like that little bit of pride where like, shit, mine's so much lower than everyone else's. I've not hit the key triggers I should have. I'm going to put that right tomorrow. So, I think people like being consistent is obviously a huge key to everything, and allowing people to kind of see that they're being consistent is really important. So we'll cover that kind of stuff in weekly meetings. And look, we try weekly stand-ups where everybody would be involved. We would go through each other's stats, but I just found it so boring. And I know that's a really bad thing to say, but I would find everyone else would as well. When they're talking about their own stuff, yeah, buzzing, I'm talking about the numbers I'm doing. When they're talking about when someone else was talking, they're like, don't give a shit what they're doing, really. Like,
doesn't really impact me, does it? Yeah.
Yeah, they'll do other stuff. Whereas actually, if you do it on a one-to-one basis, it makes a huge difference. But then also have this kind of background dashboard that they can all see. It's a lot easier to keep them engaged rather than just do it in like a weekly meeting where there's just one printout. Here we go. I think it's a much better way of doing it that way.
Nice. And you mentioned the sort of competition that it creates. When it comes to incentives, I know commission obviously is a big part of it. When it comes to like incentives or awards that you might offer internally for those that do really try and push it and be number one, what sort of things do you employ?
So I'm relatively terrible at this kind of stuff because I just am. So like I'm like, look, your commission is really good. That should be your biggest driver. But we have done like spot prizes and spot incentives, which has worked. But I found it really difficult because people would focus on the like just reaching the outcome, right? So look, we tried it. As soon as you take on two new jobs, in a week, you would get we'll go out for a meal on Friday to a nice restaurant, right? So it was that kind of stuff. And what I'd find is people would be taking on really low quality jobs because they wanted to get the meal. Yeah. Like they would always like manipulate and game the system. So I've not really invested anything other than having a really great comm scheme and saying that this is the end goal for everybody. Stuff that kind of falls in between that. Like, yeah, we might try this and we might do that. We might have we do have like quarterly targets where they'll get like kickers if we reach certain amounts and it'll kind of accelerate. But I think the individual stuff where it could be like you've got a extra day's holiday or spin the wheel and you get a bottle of beer. I'm really terrible at that kind of like, so it's like small incentive. I kind of just leave it. I leave them to it because I'm like, look, you're adults. But I treat you like an adult. I'm not going to incentivize you with a box of celebrations because you picked up the phone. Do your fucking job, make the commission, and everyone's happy. It's simple as that.
It's a really good point around the whole like low quality jobs piece that you make as well. Like I'm a lifelong gamer. I used to be a game developer as well. And the universal truth is that any human will try and find the easiest way to cheat a system that they can. If they can see a way, like with the whole like 300 minutes a week thing, the whole stereotype and joke is there, but it's very much true. It's call a family member, have a chat for 20 minutes, and that's suddenly a whole lot of your call time being filled up. Or in the case of jobs, as you say, it's getting the easiest ones on that you possibly can without having to worry about, right, is this actually the right quality thing that I want on? Or is this client that's not going to try and cheat me down on the rates and drop it down to 10% when it really should be 20, 25%, for example. So you are spot on in that thinking.
Yeah.
Love it. Cool. Well, there are 3 topics covered off. I've got a little quick fire around as well, so I'll ask you a few questions here as well around some things people might be interested in.
Well, you didn't prep me for this, for fuck's sake.
Oh, no, this is why I love that. I mean, someone didn't read the brief, or that's all I'm saying.
Oh, God.
These are quite easy to be fair as well. Favourite book or podcast that you listen to / read?
So, do you know James Sinclair?
I know the name, yeah.
Yeah, James, he's an entrepreneur, and he has a podcast where he sits down with a business owner, and it can be any sector, and like they'll talk through their business and their goals. And he's just brilliant. Like he's a really, really astute, clever guy. We're a similar age, and what he's got compared to me, I'm like in awe of. So that's my favourite podcast by quite some way.
That's a good one to Google. I haven't listened to this podcast, but it does sound interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
I hate using this term as well, but favorite LinkedIn influencer. I've said it. There you go. Favorite person to follow on LinkedIn or learn from?
Do you know what? I used to love the Recruiter Life page, right? But they must have sold it because I think someone else must be doing it now because it's gone downhill. So it would have been that, but it's not that anymore. Oh, who is it? Who do I really like? Do you know what? I find myself agreeing with nearly everything Mitch Sullivan says. And, I feel as though he's a really good person in terms of standards and improvement industry and what's right and what's not. So if it had to be anyone, it would probably be Mitch. There's probably some really great people I'm forgetting here. But yeah, so I'll go for Mitch.
Sorry, I'll take it as the one. This is always a fun one. Your favorite horror story that you've experienced in recruitment? It could happen to you, someone on your team, someone in a previous job. Particular story that maybe sticks out and you just think, God, yeah, that was horrible.
God.
Probably called Time Too Fun. You look back at it now and you laugh a little bit, but back then it was horrid.
Okay, so we had, this is a bit of like, I'm obviously not going to say names or anything, but we had a candidate who we placed probably like this kind of time of the year, right? So just coming up to Christmas parties. Hadn't started yet. It was still in his like, he was working his notice over place. So he said, look, it'd be really nice if you came to the Christmas party, it's at our office, have a few drinks, blah, blah, blah. It'd be lovely for you to meet the team and kind of be around us. So he went, he had way too much to drink, and he got caught masturbating in the toilet.
No, no way.
Yeah, what a weird thing to do. Like a really,
that's
really
horrific.
Yeah,
oh
so
my
bad,
God.
Isn't it? Yeah, the thing is, if he sees it, we'll probably know about him because not many people get to do that. Do you know what I mean? But so yeah, so
not many people do that at Christmas parties. I can imagine. No.
Yeah, it was a bit of a, when they rang us to tell us, we're just like, right, like we're somehow responsible. Like, well, yeah, oh yeah, he did mention he loves wanking at Christmas parties, but we thought
we'll add that to our screening questions in future.
Yeah. Obviously, at the time, it's like, well, there's a fee gone for December.
Because some guy couldn't keep it in his pants. Jesus wept. Yeah.
So odd, so odd. So yeah, that's a horror story.
That's amazing. What about a real big success story then, to flip it the other way?
So yeah, this would have been when I was relatively early on in my kind of recruitment career, and this is one that always sticks with me because look, it wasn't the most glamorous, biggest, best role ever. It was a really small fee, but it was a lady who had come over from Korea, like years and years ago, and she'd never been able to find what she considered a proper job because she was always like, what's like stereotyped into, well, certain jobs, and she was just like, I'm really fed up, and I actually really want to do what she considered like a noble job. And actually, it was an administrative job, like a sales admin job. So for her that was amazing. But she was really low on confidence. Like genuinely, just didn't have a lot of confidence because she's been so many knockbacks. So many people told her, she couldn't do stuff. So we spent ages and ages together, like going through interview questions and having conversations. And I got to know her and got to kind of like, she was just a lovely, lovely, lovely lady. And, she actually ended up getting the job she went for and kind of has then subsequently done incredibly well in that company and then kind of moved up and, had a career, right? And like it was just so nice that Ava's company not took a chance on her, but gave her the time to demonstrate how great she was and her to kind of have the confidence to start there and then build upon it. So that for me has always been a really feel good story where, recruiters, say, oh yeah, we change people's lives, blah, blah, blah. Like that has probably been a genuine time where it has changed someone's life for the better. And, I'm kind of really proud of it. So yeah.
And shows that it's not always all about the money as well. Sometimes it is about genuinely changing lives and giving someone chances otherwise wouldn't get.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Love it. Amazing. Cool. And then final question I'll ask you on this front then. Someone was in your shoes, say 5 years ago, trying to get themselves started with a business and really kind of looking at the future and going, God, so much to learn, so much to do. What would your advice be to them now?
Oh, crikey. So, first bit of advice would be don't employ friends. Don't employ people, family or friends. Just stay clear of that. Keep that separate. Secondly, check your bank account first thing in the morning and last thing at night, know exactly what's going in and out, and plan when stuff should be coming in and out, and be on top of that. Then
Cash is king.
Cash is king, yeah, 100%. Understand your customers, what they want, and kind of what makes them tick. Don't pay any attention to your competitors or, people in your space. Do what you feel is right and what makes your customers happy, and you'll be absolutely fine. People get tempted to be like, oh, well, they're doing videos, we should do videos. Like, just ignore all the noise around competitors and other people. Do what you think is right. Be ethical and be somebody that people want to spend time and talk to, and don't feel as though you have to be this like Alan Sugar-esque business arsehole just because you think that's what makes you successful. Actually, most of the most successful people are very, very personable and get people on side and then get them to do what they want. So, yeah, I think that's what I'd say to them.
Very much a relationship builder / building up a network is a key thing there then, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I asked for one tip and I got multiple, so that's completely fine by me, mate. Nice one. Well, that's
go.
about the end of it there, mate. That's been a really good hour or so of chatting as well. Loads of stuff taken from that as well. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it and look forward to this one coming out.
Thanks, Derek. I've loved it. Thank you, mate.
Good. No worries, mate. Good.